Hey there, welcome to another edition of Ask Ron. Question today is, are the strongest bodybuilders necessarily the best bodybuilders? Easy, quick answer, no. No, they're not. A lot of people refer back to 8-time Mr. Olympia Ronnie Coleman for that's the logic they use when they make this argument that strongest bodybuilders are the best bodybuilders because Ronnie was incredibly strong. But they're making a false connection, a false assumption here. Ronnie had awesome genetics. I believe Ronnie could have trained with more moderate weights and would have looked probably just as good. Why do I say that? I mean, Ronnie's success was a lot of hard work, obviously, but he also had phenomenal genetics. You look at the man who succeeded him as far as multiple Olympia titles, came very close anyway, was Phil Heath. Phil Heath was never known as the strongest bodybuilder around. You never saw him deadlifting 800 pounds, squatting 800 pounds, benching 500, doing all the crazy things that we saw Ronnie do in his videos. Nonetheless, Phil developed plenty of size, wouldn't you say? And he beat everybody. He couldn't be beaten. You know, the only guy that came very close to beating him was Kai a few times. Kai was very strong, I know. But it's a false conclusion. Our current Mr. Olympia, the best bodybuilder on the planet right now, as deemed by the judges at the last Olympia contest, was Sean Roden. People have criticized Sean many times for not being super strong. He's not super strong. There are guys posting on Instagram right now getting ready for local shows around here who I guarantee you are stronger in pretty much every exercise than Sean Roden, Mr. Olympia. But they would get destroyed by Sean on his worst day on a bodybuilding stage at their best. It's a weird sport that we seem to think that there's always a direct relation to what they're doing in the gym to how they're going to look on stage. And by saying that, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that you shouldn't try to get stronger. You shouldn't try to be using heavy weights and using that to build mass. Absolutely you should. You know, especially in the first, I want to say up to 10 years of your training, you should be getting stronger and stronger and stronger. There will come a point for most people at some time between 10 and, let's give a huge range, 20 years of training. That's a long time, where you're not getting any stronger. You're just not. That's it. You've maxed out. It doesn't mean you can't get better. Maybe you won't even get bigger, but you'll get better muscle maturity, detail. You'll bring up body parts. Things will improve on your body long after your strength is pretty much maxed out. But again, why do we see guys posting on Instagram tremendous weights all the time? Part of it is showing off, but I do believe a lot of these guys in their hearts of hearts believe that the key to being a better bodybuilder is getting stronger and stronger. If you're doing it in the rep range for gains, for muscle growth, which is generally considered to be 8 to 10, 8 to 12 for the upper body, let's give it a range of like 10 to 20 for the lower body. If you're getting stronger and stronger in those rep ranges, you probably are putting on muscle. I see a lot of guys now who call themselves bodybuilders and compete in bodybuilding, posting up max singles on deadlifts, squats, bench presses. Guys, that's powerlifting. That's a whole other sport. You know, that's where you're judged by how strong you are in those lifts, in a competition, on stage, in a meet, you know, with judges judging, make sure you're doing the lift properly. But in bodybuilding, you're judged entirely on the way your physique looks. So a lot of the times, the strongest guys, especially if their genetics aren't that great, they don't do that well. Case in point, there was one year I did the New England. I'm not going to say which year because I don't want to slam the guy. I'm sure he's not a bad guy, but I was a heavyweight in the NPC, which is between 198 and 225. And in my class, there was a guy who was also a champion powerlifter. He's actually done much better in powerlifting than he ever did in bodybuilding. He did okay in bodybuilding, but genetics are bad. Genetics are not very good. Physique's not very good. And I'm not picking on the guy. It's just, you know, genetics. It's not like you choose your genetics. It's just the luck of the draw. It's what you were given. Anyway, backstage before the show, everybody was talking, and he was talking to some people, and I was just, you know, eavesdropping. I didn't have a lot going on. Didn't have headphones or anything. Talking about how he was a competitive powerlifter, a national champ. He had set a couple national records in his weight class in some organization. I think he said he had squatted like 800 pounds. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this guy's legs must be crazy. You know, unassisted, without anybody spotting me and helping, I don't think I ever squatted more than 495 for a single in my life. And I didn't do singles very often. In my younger years, I did. But I always had people helping me. So I don't claim those as lifts because somebody was always getting me out of the bottom. The most I ever did in my life for one rep was probably 495. Not, you know, let's just call it 500. So anyway, I'm thinking, this guy did 800. He must have these massive legs that would dwarf mine. Well, finally, we all took our shit off and started pumping up. And I took a look over and I'm like, oh, geez, wow, my legs are way better than his. That's odd. But, you know, I used to do a lot of reps. I would do 315 for 20, 405 for 10 to 15. I would do hack squats, all kinds of plates for 10 to 20 reps, leg press, super heavy weights for anywhere from 15 to 20 reps. I was more of a rep guy. I would do low reps at times. I would go as low as 5 or 6 reps in sets. But for the most part, for legs, I rarely went under 8 to 10. And a lot of my sets were in the higher ranges, between 10 and 20. I never had it in my head that if I could squat more or bench press more for a single, bench press, that my legs would grow. My legs, I always got the best results. I got sore, and I saw the most gains when I did more reps with as heavy a weight as I could in that rep range. So it's nothing unusual. Let's look at the NFL, for example, which is a much more mainstream sport that a lot more people can relate to. So the NFL every February has this NFL Combine. That's where that's part of the draft, the NFL draft. So what do they do in the NFL Combine? You can tell I'm not a football fan. I actually have to reference this. So they're testing the speed, the power, and the agility of these college seniors who are being drafted for the NFL in the 40-yard dash, the bench press, the vertical jump, the broad jump, 3-cone drill, and the shuttle run. So you would assume, a lot of people would assume, the people who do the guys who do the best at overall in this NFL Combine in all those events, that's a great predictor of how well they're going to do as NFL players, right? It's not at all. There's probably some stats that you could pull up somewhere, but no, it doesn't predict how good of a player. Case in point, back in the year 2000, the Combine, that's the year Tom Brady was drafted. Tom Brady did not do very well in these events. Very mediocre scores overall. And in fact, the Patriots picked him in the 6th round of the NFL draft. He was the 199th player chosen, 7th quarterback chosen. Wow, Tom was going to be a pretty shitty player in the NFL, right? Well, a lot of people now consider him to be the greatest NFL player in the league right now, or maybe of all time. He's got six Super Bowl wins. It's a record. He's got many, many other records you could reference. But going back to his Combine results, you wouldn't have thought he was going to be this awesome player, but he was. He did become an awesome player. So the same thing. You can't look in the gym at this pro can squat this much. He's using this much for dumbbells. He's doing barbell rolls with this much. It doesn't mean they're going to be the best bodybuilder. They're going to be any better. I mean, if you're going by pure strength, strongest man in the world right now is the Mountain, Hafthor Bjornsson. Would Hafthor be a great bodybuilder? No, he wouldn't. His waist is enormous. He doesn't have the aesthetics. He doesn't have the structure and the shape for a pretty physique. And going back to Sean Roden, why Sean Roden, Mr. Olympia? There's a lot of guys who are much, much stronger than him that are trying to win the Mr. Olympia, and they're not beating him, and they're never going to beat him. Somebody will beat him eventually, don't worry. I know, I'm not saying he's not going to get beaten. But what I am saying is bodybuilding is not just about strength in the gym. It's not about, I want to say it's not even about how hard you train. It's how smart you train. There's guys out there killing themselves, super heavy weights, drop sets, supersets, giant sets. But if they don't have the best genetics, if they don't have very elite genetics, even if they manage to turn pro, they're not going to be fighting for the Mr. Olympia title, fighting for the Arnold Classic title, just because they're super strong. You can't will yourself into an awesome physique, as much as some people like to think it's possible to do so. And strength is a big part of that, I know. Strength is something that a lot of guys can improve on. You can't change your genetics, you can't change your structure, your shape, but a lot of guys can get stronger and stronger, so they cling to that, and they want to reference that as why they deserve to be bodybuilding champions or to win contests. But unfortunately, you're not being judged up there on anything but purely the visual impact of your physique. How does your physique look compared to the other guys you're standing next to? Do you have a better structure? Do you have a better shape? Do you have more mass? And you say, well, if I'm stronger, I'll have more mass. Not necessarily. I'm going to reference a local guy again, a different local guy. There's a young guy in his 20s I know. I vaguely know him, but I see him on social media all the time posting crazy, he loves deadlifts, crazy max deadlifts all the time. This kid's in his 20s. He's on plenty of quote-unquote supplements. He should be growing like crazy, but I haven't seen this kid put on much size in years now. He should be much, much bigger by now. But I believe the reason he's not growing is because he's training more like a power lifter. He's worrying about maximum lifts that he can post on Instagram. If he was more concerned with more reps, better mind-muscle connection, I think he'd be a lot bigger by now. Maybe he's going to come back. He's going to know I'm talking about him. He's going to say, well, you know, I do all that. I don't think you do, because you'd be a lot bigger. Trust me. Unless you have really shitty genetics for putting on muscle mass, and maybe you do. But for the most part, if you were doing more reps and focusing more on, you know, getting good pumps, feeling the muscle work when you're training it, you'd be putting on more size. And I think a lot of guys are in that trap right now. I think they're more concerned about getting stronger and stronger, and they're confusing powerlifting with bodybuilding. And that's why they're not putting on the size. So if you're hearing this, anybody, and that's you, think about it. If you've been training very, very heavy and you've been focusing on getting stronger and stronger, and you've been getting stronger, but you haven't been getting any bigger, something's not working. Something that you're doing is not producing results, correct? Why don't you try something different? Why don't you try for a while, more reps, forget about the 1 reps, 3 reps, forget about all that shit. Train like a bodybuilder for a while. Higher reps, 10 to 12 reps for the upper body, 10 to 20 reps for the lower body. You know, even some crazy sets where you're doing 30, 40, 50 reps for the legs sometimes. Try it. You've got nothing to lose. If you haven't been making any gains, if your physique hasn't changed in months or maybe even years of training that, whatever you're doing, you need to try something different regardless. You know, maybe some of the guys who've been doing nothing but reps could go lower in the reps, do the 3, 4, 5 reps for a little while, and they would probably see some gains just because it's something so different. It would be a shock to the body. But being stronger doesn't necessarily make you a better bodybuilder. If it did, you know, the strongest bodybuilders would be the ones winning all the top titles, and that's not the case. So that's been my little take on this. It's very familiar, isn't it? I kind of harp on this a lot because I just see so much of it on Instagram especially that I can't be quiet. I have to speak up. So that's all. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Please check out my Instagram at Ron Harris Muscle, and appreciate you guys watching these videos. Talk to you next time.